Now, you may have heard of William de Wendenall, a baron to King Richard the Lionheart, High Sheriff of Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, and it is in that second role, particularly Sheriff of Nottingham rather than High Sheriff of Nottinghamshire, it is that role that you may know him best. But perhaps you recognise not the name, only the title, and perhaps you recognise him as a villain, but really is there cause to think of him as such? Though you may argue that King Richard did replace William de Wendenall with William de Ferrers, the 4th Earl of Derby, in 1194, and that after that point any record of de Wendenall vanishes, so perhaps. Anyway, you've probably heard of a sheriff, but do you know what one is? Well, the post dates from the Anglo-Saxons, and its name comes from them too, from a combination of two words, shire and reeve. The reeve is an important Anglo-Saxon post, and the reeve was empowered to hold court and to try local civil and criminal matters. In 992, the first shire reeves, something that means guardian in Old English, were ordered by the king to collect a tax, the onerous Danegeld, a ransom extracted by the Danes after the defeat of the Saxons at the Second Battle of Maldon on the 10th of August 991. The amount to be collected was 24 pieces of silver per household, a cruel imposition for the time, and these reeves, well, they proved to be successful tax gatherers, and under the Saxon kings they became the monarch's trusted administrators within the shires, not just for laws but also for gathering taxes. After the conquest they were appointed for every shire, and therefore the name became shire reeve or sheriff, and that role remained at the heart of the national administration and of the English counties for hundreds of years. At the county or shire level, the sheriff was an important man. Sheriffs collected revenue for the crown. They collected fines and rents and taxes. They were accountable to the National Revenue Court, the Court of Exchequer, for taxes payable to the count, and they used a rent roll, a great long line of parchment which had been determined by the Doomsday Survey. Each sheriff had the facility to farm, spelt firm, his taxes, and that meant he could apply taxation to the population for his own benefit as well as for the benefit of the Exchequer. It was this that made the medieval sheriff a deeply unpopular, even hated figure, giving rise to caricatures such as the evil Sheriff of Nottingham in the tale of Robin Hood. They also executed writs, they put together juries, they guarded prisoners and presided over the county court. It was a sheriff's job to investigate things other than crimes and report back to the king, and they had military as well as legal responsibilities. It will most likely not surprise you to learn that sheriffs could be bribed. They were men of great power, and any threat which they made to extort money could probably be carried out with relative impunity. Despite it being illegal, it wasn't unknown for them to torture prisoners, and they could even make money by threatening well-off prisoners with torture, regardless of whether there was any basis of crime that they'd been arrested for. Should someone escape from one of the prisons, or if a sheriff caught somebody committing a crime, the sheriff could execute them then and there, provided the coroner, who was responsible for determining the cause of death of a person and making sure the king got a share of their estate, was present, or at least could be worked with. The sheriff was a man greatly to be feared. However, the office was held at the king's pleasure, and sheriffs were drawn from the rank of barons, royal administrators, and the local gentry, men of different sorts, though all of the military, nobility, and elite. Henry I was renowned for raising from the dust men of common stock, and many of these became sheriffs, as did many of his own household officers. However, I caution you to remember that common stock does not mean simple peasants, but means men of noble, Norman, most normally, birth. You see, when it came to choosing their sheriffs, kings had to be careful to strike a balance between choosing men who were of sufficient standing, of wealth, power and prestige to allow authority over the local landed and military aristocracy, and between creating officials with so much power that they became entrenched and unaccountable. It was particularly important from the king's point of view not to create an office that became an inherited one, something that would weaken his control. And in a few cases, this did happen. For example, in Gloucester, from about 1070, the office was held by one family for some 70 years. And over time, powerful officials and overly powerful officials could become a problem, notably in the troubled reign of King Stephen and Empress Matilda during what is sometimes called the Anarchy. So, whether the Sheriff of Nottingham was a villain, he held an important position, and one which he could, and which some sheriffs did, abuse to enrich themselves at the expense of, well, anybody and everybody within the Shire.